Welcome back, everybody, to another fantastic episode of. Well, this is kind of a thing that I used to do, where I used to narrate stories that I wrote, and what I need for you to do is to listen through the whole thing, and then at the end, I need your honest feedback, good or bad. I need your honest feedback. It would mean a lot. I'm trying to get better at my writing, and so I need your help with that. So if you can spare a half an hour of your time, that'd be fantastic. This is a short story I wrote called Contrived Jeopardy, and let's just jump right into it. Oh yeah. That's right, I remember. So this is a fiction. Nothing about this is related to anything or anybody, and it's not particularly violent or explicit. Okay, here we go. PNW Affliction, Contrived Jeopardy. In deep breaths, everybody, and the chickens. In the not-too-distant future, the line stretched several cars deep at the checkpoint, each car waiting its turn, hoping to not get carjacked or any other number of opportunistic violence that could happen during the morning commute. The forward of the two gates lifted, and the car ahead moved. Then the forward gate closed, and the rear gate lifted, and it was the next driver's turn. Entering Den City, Sierra 8, the car chirped eagerly to its driver, announcing that at least according to the GPS, they'd entered into another 15-minute chunk of the city. Misty morning rain drizzled, and the failing gutters of the checkpoint transferring a torrent of dirty water from the structure above to the car below. Then, as sensors detected the sudden deluge of water, windshield wiper fluid sprayed a burst of rain begone. Simultaneously, wipers mixed the solution with rainwater and smeared both around with marginal effect. Inside the vehicle, there was the typical morning mixture of noises between the sound of the rain, the windshield wiper blades, and the morning AM news, with brief spurts of the vehicle's voice trying to cut in on occasion with a random notification. The news faded away from coverage detailing ongoing impacts of the crippling ransomware attack on Wall Street to the local news detailing where today's expected protests were supposed to be when the car cut in with an announcement interrupting the broadcast. Your destination is 6 minutes away based on best route. Several moments went by as finally the forward mechanical arm lifted and the arm behind lowered, allowing the vehicle to pass through. This also meant that her Fed coin account got debited another, whatever the daily fee was, crossing from her home block to work. Oh well, she needed something to get her jazzed up in the few minutes before having to go into the office. Time to turn this dreary, droning news off. Music, please. The driver's mouth dropped in horrific realization. No, wait. But it was too late, and the car's AI was already searching for a song. A soothing electronic tune started playing, but it was promptly interrupted by the car's notification again. Resubscription fee processed of 130 Fedcoin. Favorite station commencing. Enjoy. No. She pounded on the steering wheel, but it did no good. The car ignored her, the ride commencing regardless. The morning sun was trying to fight through the clouds and crisscross buildings as she took the few lefts and rights to her building. To the right, two unarmed security were talking to a homeless character. He or she was hunched over in the ubiquitous Fent Ben's position with feces streaming down their leg and towards the adjacent tent. She shrugged and kept driving. She pulled into the parking garage and rolled the window down to wave her badge at the guard, but there was no look of recognition. Lights around the stoic building blasted through the haze of rain, and he looked almost through her, then to the badge. Whatever was important about the badge seemed to meet his approval, though, and he gestured her through. "Have a nice day, Flux," he said. The only response she had to give was, "You too." While it was normally pleasant to hear one's name be spoken, his manufactured demeanor rang hollow. She knew she'd never see him again. This place had rotating security so much you'd think they'd hired whoever happened to walk by that day that could make it a whole shift without visible withdrawal symptoms. But it wasn't nice to joke. A living wage job was a living wage job, after all. Another set of mechanical security arms, another 20 Fed coin down the drain for the daily privilege of a parking fee. She paid a little extra monthly fee to reserve one of the coveted EV spots so she could charge her car at work. It was probably the only remaining thing that offset the cost of the return to office mandate. She followed the garage signs around to the special EV designated spots. They had to have special coatings around the stalls and various high-tech lithium-ion fire suppression systems, but it was absolutely worth it. Normally. Today, there was just one problem. Someone had parked in her parking stall. Flux backed up, pulled around, and took the nearest guest parking spot. She grabbed her bag and looked at the power readout of her car one last time for a semblance of reassurance. She double-checked and triple-checked, just to be sure the car indicated enough juice to get back home. There had been so many brownouts, she was lucky to get 2 hours max of charging at her house before she had to be back in the office for her in-office day. Unfortunately, she'd been using her car to backstop it's supposed to be back pub. Apologies. Unfortunately, she'd been using her car to back pump the electric on a few of her necessary appliances, hoping the grid would get her caught back up, but it hadn't. Hopefully the parking office could get the tow bot out to her spot and get the vehicle out. Handy little deal that was supposed to be automated and scan the tag of the car to match with the vehicle and move it. Nowhere to be seen, though, and its charging nook was empty, so maybe it was on a lower basement floor moving another vehicle. Who knew? Ideally, the beefy yellow robot would come, get under, and scoot the vehicle away. Maybe after 10 a.m. the car would be relocated and she'd come back down here and at least get her vehicle 6 hours of fast charge. That'd be enough to last her several more days and run more stuff at the house. Seemed like a good plan. She went up some stairs and navigated around through another 3 sets of badge doors, up more stairs and through another badge checkpoint to the parking office. A printed out 8.5 by 11 piece of paper taped to the inside of the safety glass steel doors windows contained a hastily crafted message. Hours, 9 a.m., Thursdays. Flux humphed, then looked at the time. Not only was it before 9 a.m., but it was a Tuesday. The best she could hope for was that the robot caught up with its duties. With that, Flux crossed her fingers, licked her lips, and walked to the elevator, swiped her badge, mashed the floor she had to go to, and waited. She tapped her foot, trying to get back into the vibe, trying to hum the first few minutes of the song she'd accidentally paid a full year subscription to listen to. That set her back for sure, but Flux vowed to do her best to put that music subscription to good use. She'd load the app back to her phone and listen to it maybe during lunch. Yeah, that's it. In no time at all, the appropriate elevator going to the set of floors she worked on arrived. Flux moved to the side, but nobody came bursting out, so in she went. She scanned her badge to activate the lift, and up she went. Flux blinked a few times as her elevator zoomed all the way up to her floor with no interruptions. She stepped out, looked left and right, and got her bearings, then headed in the direction of her cube. After her typical login procedure, it was time to check her emails and get to work. As her systems loaded, though, her stomach began to grumble again. Dang it, she'd been in a hurry and completely skipped breakfast. Unfortunately, this stupid place still hadn't restocked a kitchen. Instead, they installed these idiotic honor system kiosks that never got refilled and were now full of expired food. She listened for movement in the cubes adjacent as the computer did its thing, and there was none. Pretty much a big empty building, at least as far as the floor she was on was concerned. Grumble. No, Tummy, there's no food here, Flux muttered. Grumble. She hadn't even had time to pack herself a lunch, dang it. Coming into the office was a cruel joke indeed. Could easily do all of this from home. But before she had time to think about it much, the desktop wallpaper loaded. Trident Industries. The words were emblazoned across the screen. Creating the better world tomorrow, today. Flux shook her head at the way the phrasing always seemed slightly off, but she could never quite put her finger on it. Trident was okay, though. She liked this place. They made a real product. Well, at least she worked for a department that supported a department that made a real product. The first year had whizzed by with little fanfare, and despite the lack of any semblance of retention during the most recent bioweapon attack to hit their city, this job wasn't all that bad. Military contracts were the place to be in this new world of never-ending three-way proxy wars, and she was at the center of it. She began working her way through emails that were pretty basic. A whole string of reply all congrats for some temporary manager becoming a real manager, so he'd technically qualify for a requirement bump. Hold on. Okay, excuse me. A whole string of reply all congrats for some temporary manager becoming a real manager, so he'd technically qualify for a retirement bump. She held down the delete key for a while. A mandatory all hands for her group, one for her department, and an administrator org level meeting for everyone. Well, there goes half the day. And isn't everyone on vacation? There's like nobody here. But no sooner had the words come out of her mouth, the telltale blur of a gal in her early 30s and a trail of dreadlocks indicating that her coworker had arrived in the nick of time. Ack, I had to drop the kiddo off. And did you see the protesters gathering out front again? Again, huh? Nah, I must have just missed them. By the way, 9 a.m. just got canceled anyway, so we got an hour of time back. Our coworker chirped over the side of the cubicle. Oh, really? Okay, cool. A bunch of bags flumped down in the adjacent cube as Flux resumed holding down delete on email after email. Flux grumbled to herself. You want me to move everything around for your meetings, then you just go on and cancel them with no notice. Come on, sheesh. Flux saw an email come through, something about a small-sized protest gathering in the front of the building, and to use the back entrance and exit until it's cleared out. Pretty standard, so nothing to worry about. Flux deleted the email, as she had so many times before, and kept reading as she fussed it to herself quietly. Flux's coworker spoke over her cube again after getting settled. Hey, I hear you over there. Since we have newly found time now, do you want to go get some coffee? We can be there and back and get some work done before the 10 a.m. Flux's tummy grumbled again as her cubemate continued. I'll pay. And that was all Flux's needed to hear, and responded. Sure, Icy, let's go. The two gals locked their computers and exited the building with nobody seeming to know or care. They hid their badges inside the RFID blocked, zipped pockets they had on their pants, and headed out the myriad of locked doors, gates, and turnstiles until they were finally at the exit to their building. Yet another new guard, neither recognized, waved to the duo as they left. The smell of relatively fresh, roasted coffee permeated the coffee shop as Flux looked at the ordering pad, familiarizing herself with the buttons. Then, after a few moments, punched in an order for the coffee she wanted, then paused for a moment, stopping to look longingly towards her work friend, hoping patiently that her friend would fork out for lunch too. Oh yeah, get yourself some lunch too. Don't give me those puppy dog eyes, Icy said. Flux clapped and punched in an order for a sandwich for lunch, and a breakfast burrito too. Then Icy swiped the Fed coin card. The purchase was approved in a few seconds, and then the vending machine got to work making everything. While waiting for the food still, Flux looked around a bit, contemplating how it was that, although the two of them had started together through some odd series of events, her friend had managed to negotiate a higher salary. Their way of being equitable to each other was that her friend sometimes bought her chow. Had to re-equity the equity, of course. In all honesty, it seemed to be a good deal. The two watched out for each other when in the office too, making sure nobody could edge in on their QA department and sneak responsibilities away from them. No way, no how. And when one got a bonus, they made sure the other got one. They were a team to be reckoned with. Flux sipped her coffee, a mild roast, with tons of creamer and whip on top. The food vending machines were okay, but sometimes they took a few minutes. It wasn't too big of a deal. There were a few people in the bistro she didn't recognize, sipping what smelled like lattes. but they didn't seem, well, Flux wrinkled her nose for a second, thinking and trying to will herself to not think out loud. They did seem to be looking her direction more than normal folks around here would. Normally people minded their own business for breakfast. Flux sighed. They weren't looking away, but they weren't really looking at her either. Though there was nothing in the direction they were looking that was of any particular significance. They would turn to each other and whisper, scrolling on their phones through an application she didn't recognize. It did look like a picture of the rear of the Trident building. However, before she had another moment to dwell on it, their food was done, and it was time to go. In short order, the two were headed back to the office, all the worries forgotten. The day was now feeling lighter and so much better. They looked both ways, after pulling their badges from concealment, scanned their badges to get back through the heavy iron gates. Off in the distance, they heard a rabble echoing from building to building, but didn't think much of it. Probably just the protesters on the other side of the building, at the open courtyard, energized about the speech they were making. It didn't faze the duo, though, so they made their way across the remainder of the rear courtyard and then inside. They exchanged nods with the security officers, who stopped chatting in order that their conversation not be overheard, before heading up the elevators and back to the offices. Back to their desks and tummies full of coffee and food, it was time to review and respond to at least a few QA help tickets on their company's latest project before the 10 a.m. was going to start. They'd probably get asked the status on catching up on the ticket queue anyway, so good idea to bust a few out. Icy was thinking the same thing and offered over the queue. Well, hey, I'm scrolling through the task queue. This first one looks right up my alley if you want to check out the next one. Flux nodded. Sounds good. I'll take the second one then. Oh, and thanks again for breakfast and lunch. No worries, let's knock out at least one ticket out each before the 10 a.m. Sounds good? Sounds good. Flux sipped her coffee as she reviewed the data on the first ticket. Flux. Latest trial indicates... Flux twirled her hair, thinking to herself, of course the first ticket she's stuck with is going to be engineering heavy. Gee, thanks, Icy. I see what you did there. Okay, here we go. Flux began to speak through the ticket aloud more to help her think. Latest trial indicates the spread of the... Flux scrolled back up to the top of the ticket to see which module this was for and squinted her eyes. She opened up her spec program and dragged it to her second monitor so she could compare the spec of the platform with what the ticket was claiming the issue was. Flux mused. Okay, drone disruptor railgun for Type 2 frigate. Flux glanced back and forth between her two monitors, reading through the ticket as she went and aligning it with the spec sheet. Flux. Okay, what is the spec for the output width for the railgun? Flux looked through the ticket, trying to find the distance the ticket submitter was claiming the width was messed up at. Flux mused aloud some more. Well, this one's spec'd to melt size 3 drones out to 1,000 yards. She found the matrix on the spec and did a few calculations. She squinted and sighed before double-checking her calculations. Thought for a second. Flux mused aloud some more. So, it has to launch the plasma, then the pulse ignites it, so... Like, how am I even supposed to know where they're aiming it if they don't send me the dang targeting data? Give me a freaking break. Flux wrote up some notes for them to send back to the targeting... send back the targeting data, so she'd have enough info to calculate the spread, and see if the ticket was verifiable enough to send along to the developers or not. She wasn't going to take the field's word for anything without the raw data. She needed real, hard data if she was going to send it back to the developer, or boy howdy, the engineers would rip her apart. But before Flux could get her ticket kicked back, Icy piped up. And send. Flux. Ah, you beat me. Icy. No worries, I'll check some emails and... Oh, hey, The 10 a.m. is cancelled. Flux squinted, reading her copy of the email at the same time focusing specifically on the header data, not who the to field said it was from. Flux. Oh, it's from the admin updating the calendar for the boss. Okay, the boss is out. I see. Who's your backup? Flux scratched her head, then responded sarcastically. What's the org chart say? Haha, just kidding. Who knows? Flux gently itched the other side of her head. Well, it wasn't too abnormal for meetings to drop off and nobody bothered to say why, Flux supposed. The admins had been very lazy on maintaining the organizational office chart or even defining any semblance of official structure at this point, so maybe the admins and managers were in their own universe, which was very likely. But nothing more coming to mind about the subject. Flux shrugged the thought off with a twitch and proceeded to check her IM again to see if the admin was even online, but nope. According to the activity timestamp, the admin had just logged off. Flux hopped up and ran around the corner to see if maybe the admin was sitting at their cube all along, but it was dark. Nobody in the office at all, from the management area either. Flux walked back to where her and Icy sat and let out a nervous chuckle to interrupt the silence before speaking. Guess we're on our own today, then. Icy mused the obvious aloud. Nobody over there either, huh? Yeah, I guess that makes us leaderless for a while then. Oh hey, what's this email? A new email plopped into Flux's email browser. Both began to read aloud simultaneously. Protest activity increased around HQ1, building in temporary lockdown. Nobody in or out, including vehicles. Your safety is our #1 concern? Flux shrugged, trying to swat away a nervous itch near her eye now. Dang, why was she so itchy? Had the water in her shower gone weird or something? Last week she received a weird email from the water company about a reservoir issue or something, but there hadn't been time to read it. Maybe when she got home she'd take another look at that article and see what's what. Then Flux shook her head to refocus on the current situation. Flux began to think through the situation. So, well, with the 10 a.m. being cancelled, that means we don't have to give a status report, which also means we have some downtime again. Icy nodded. Yeah, hey, let's drop your leftovers and lunch in the fridge before we forget. Then we'll get out on the balcony. They won't be able to see us. I bet it'll be really exciting. Flux began to protest, then thought better of it. Oh, come on, Icy. Well, fine. Okay. Grab your jacket, and I'll grab mine. And we'll take it easy out there and finish our coffee. See what the protest topic of the day actually is for ourselves. The two collectively and casually made their way to the little mini useless kitchen of a few microwaves, toaster, and fridge, then out to their level's balcony. Icy searched for a moment, then pointed out. Ah, found them. Flux shuffled over and rested her elbows on the balcony's barrier and looked down at the 10 stories down. Flux looked around. Well, that can't be all of them, right, Izzy? That's only like... Flux flinched a little. Like 12 people max? Icy nodded. Yeah, they probably want to give their little speech and start going home. No big deal. Flux foamed to herself. Yeah, no big deal. I mean, they gotta know, right, that most, if not all, the people that work here on the regular are in total agreement with them, right? Icy shrugged. Yeah, I don't know. This is literally only a defensive weapon system. Excuse me. This is literally only a defensive system we develop. They don't know that. They don't know that. They don't know that. They don't know that. Don't they know that? Excuse me, my eyes are being a challenge. Apologies. Excuse me, I'm going to try this sentence again and get it right. Icy shrugged. Yeah, I don't know. This is literally only a defensive system we develop. Don't they know that? And it has civilian applications as well? Aren't people tired of having to worry about drones buzzing near airports and above their children in the swimming pool and stuff? It's harmless to people and commercial transit. Well, no more dangerous than the jets falling apart all on their own anyway, all joking aside. Flux shrugged in kind. Yeah, and the materials it uses are environmentally friendly, and it doesn't mess with animals. Like, I have no idea. Icy shrugged in return, and both sipped their coffee and went inside. Hopefully it'd blow over by the end of lunch, both hoped, and soon it got chilly out there, so both went back inside to work on more QA tickets. Flux remembered on the way back inside to detour back to the basement to charge her EV, and to her delight, the robot must have dragged off the car, as it was no longer in the guest spot. Which is good, because Flux fairly remembered that was only supposed to be a 2-hour spot anyway. So it all worked out good. Flux hit the chirpy button for the car to chirp, and sure enough, it was in the EV spot, as it was supposed to. Flux walked up to the car, pressed her hand on the sensor, and the door popped open. Behind her and up the ramp to ground level, she thought she heard a big slam, but tried to excuse the noise as jitters, and promptly forgot. Had to focus on the task at hand. Car, please go park in your designated spot, okay? Her car recognized her voice command and hummed to life. It then proceeded to scan around with its LiDAR, recognized the spot it had been assigned to park and was now available, then proceeded to perfectly back out, then went to park in its proper spot and waited for further instructions. There was an induction charger in the floor, but for premium level 4 charging, the car had to be plugged in, so Flux swiped her badge, which activated the charger and hauled the heavy-duty cable over to her car, and with a firm thunk, the charging began. Her watch and phone both synced up with the car and informed her of the car's proceeding charging situation. After a few moments, the overbuilt charging unit had its capacitor reservoirs full and began to ramp up power into the vehicle. After a few more moments, the car's auxiliary fans kicked on, and she ramped up to be charging to full speed. And with a nod to the success of the situation, Flux instructed the car to lock and headed back to her cube without another thought. On the way, it was noted a few people seemed to be down in the parking garage basement, apparently gathering belongings, but who knows? Maybe there was a party today or something. Flux ignored the situation regardless, none of her business, and went back to the elevators and up to her workspace. Then was promptly greeted by Icy. "Where were you, gal? I've been trying to call you." Flux checked her phone, and suddenly it updated with a bunch of messages. "Was in the basement," Flux mused. "No cell down there, and no cell in the elevator either. Sorry. Let's crack a lackin'." In the entire year that Flux had been working with Icy, she'd never seen Icy this stressed. She had an almost lost look about her, and looked like she'd half started packing her bags for some reason. Icy shivered and pointed to Flux's PC. I don't know. You read your email and let me know what you think." Icy crossed her arms and stared impatiently. Flux nodded reassuringly. "I'll take a look. Icy crossed her arms? I think I said that. It was Icy crossing her arms. Flux nodded reassuringly. "I'll take a look. I'm sure whatever it is." Flux sat down and started reading, then responded with an abrupt, "Oh," then got comfy in her chair and read the rest of the email until it turned into the obligatory, "Your safety comes number one, fluff." Then turned back around to face Icy, whose very essence was hinging on Flux's response to the matter. Flux flinched, eyes wide for a second, then her left ear started bugging her. She swallowed, wiggled her jaw for a second, and then it went away. Flux wiggled. Ew, that was weird. Okay. Icy looked on expectantly. Somewhere on the other side of the office, someone had snuck in after core hours. Somewhere on the other side of the office, someone had snuck in after core hours, and they had started promptly sneaking their way back out. Icy looked at her watch, sighing heavily. Flux blinked a few times, looked at her watch too. "Well," Flux chewed on her lip absent-mindedly, "let's go over what we know from my perspective. Then you can go. Go get a sip of water too." Icy got her water bottle and came back to Flux taking a sip from hers. Flux sighed with her collected thoughts and then began. So the building's surrounded. A set of protesters in the front, blocking the front entrance, and another set in the back, protesting different things, but coordinated in all likelihood. Flux paused to take a sip of water, and Icy did too, albeit nervously, nodding slowly. Then Flux continued. "They want people to gather downstairs, but only if you're willing to take mass transit." Icy cut in. "The train's so scary, Flux. People get stabbed on it, like, every day." Flux nodded, though she didn't want to admit it, held her palm out for Icy to hang on, then swallowed and continued. "Flux, they're going to wait until the coast is clear, out one of the side exits, get people out to the train when it stops at the station nearby, but yeah, that doesn't really get us anywhere with resources or a plan. It seems like they want to get rid of us, but it's still morning. Well, it's still before noon, at least. So we can always wait for another option. I imagine management will chime in soon, right?" Icy shrugged, then nodded. "Makes sense. Like, we have meetings today, right? With them, right? So we can ask them then?" Icy raised an eyebrow, and Flux nodded. "Makes sense." But neither was in the mood to particularly work, so instead they chatted back and forth about how they were going to try and handle the new policy regarding having each room in their house occupied or face a new tax. Icy and Flux shared potential friends that could move in that were unemployed, so they could get the credit, and it gave each a few ideas based on who was in their 15-minute blocks. Each lived in a different section, and neither qualified anyway, but they were sure they could find someone in time. This would be so they wouldn't have some rando showing up or face the homeless authority complex, known with the condescending 3-letter acronym HACS. The two passed the time until the next meeting would have come up, but it was promptly cancelled. As well, managers weren't online, so the admins canceled the meetings, then signed back off again. Great. That put the duo at about lunchtime, and they couldn't really find anyone else in the office that they knew. The latecomers must come in on the train and then just leave again on the train. The folks driving in must normally come in on another day or something. How could they not know who's even supposed to be here? What if this was a real emergency? How would they even know who was safe and who wasn't? So maybe look around for clues. They split up and walked around to check folks' whiteboards or whatever to see when they came in, and some said other days or none at all, and it was clear the only rule was that there was no rules at all. "Rules for me, but not for thee," Flux said, then nervously scanned around for a second, remembering still that nobody was there. But then the emails were quiet for a while, almost to the point of concern that email might even be down. And while the two tried more idle chit-chat, nothing quite seemed to vibe anymore. It was like an uneasiness had settled upon the building, much like a calm before the storm, and before long their calendars had been cleared up remotely and anonymously by admins for the rest of the day, leaving them with their thoughts for a while as they worked in relative silence. Well, it's about lunchtime and security hasn't said anything, and I can't find anything on the socials either, Icy lamented. Flux wiped her eyes from staring at QA tickets, unable to focus to move the needle on her ticket count whatsoever. Flux. Hey, what's about we go back out to the patio and look down and maybe the protesters are gone. Get some fresh air and check on things out there. Maybe something and security forgot to tell us. Icy nodded. That makes sense. I definitely don't want to find out the hard way face first in the basement. Flux nodded, keeping the thoughts to herself that peaceful intent or not. If even one protester got into the basement, it'd be a mess regardless, but at least Icy and her were nice and safe in this essentially impenetrable fortress, as every military contract facility was by standard. Both locked their PCs, and then back to the fridge they went, then out to the patio, both making sure to have their badges, and of course they did. It was nice enough outside for a January-ish day, one of those rare warm days between the storm or some such, apparently. Icy flinched subconsciously as she munched on her lunch. Welp, nobody on the north entrance. Flux scrunched her face and looked off. A reflection in the adjacent building. Flux. Oh yeah, I see them. They're in front of the frickin' parking garage doors. No wonder. Then Flux took a bite and continued, mouth half full. But honestly, they seem pretty peaceful. The chants could be faintly heard, echoing up. Icy ate another bite of her sandwich. Yeah, I don't know. They should be done with their speeches. I have no idea why they're still chanting something something, weapons of war, something something. Flux shrugged. I don't know. Oh hey. Look, another group of coworkers is leaving our building to the train. Out the front. Icy froze for a second, checked her phone. Ah, you've got to be kidding me. Flux whipped around, sandwich halfway done. Huh? What's up? Icy scrunched her nose, trying to imagine the exclamation being something positive, but knowing it wasn't. Icy raised an eyebrow. Well, they let another group head home, I guess, so again, like with no notice. Flux flinched and looked back out. Yeah, look. Some of the protest group from the garage is circling back around to block the front again. Yeah, mean to tell me that the protesters are blocking us in here on purpose? Who would do that? What and why does that even mean, huh? Flux sat down on the bench with a humph, a bird fluttering down, seeing if there was any bread from the sandwiches remaining to share. Immediately found a few crumbs and decided to hang out. Icy turned to see Flux sat down and saw her holding her head. Icy, hey, you okay there, girl? Flux stretched her shoulders. Just my head, I guess. I don't know. Whole thing's giving me a headache. Not feeling myself all of a sudden. Icy consoled her, then gestured. Come on, let's go inside, get you sat down. I'll try to figure this whole thing out. Let me take over a bit. Come on, I'll start thinking. Icy thought for a few minutes. After she got Flux sat back down, carefully reviewed all the emails. Looked at the time, around 1 p.m. Checked the weather app on her phone. Saw when sundown was. Suddenly got an IM from a coworker friend from a prior project. Bloop bloop. The telltale sound of an instant message conversation request. Icy clicked to open the IM from her friend, who was working remotely that day. He would have been sitting on the other side of her, so Icy knew he wasn't there, because his cube was empty. The message read, Hey, do you know if anyone's in the office? Icy raised an eyebrow, responding, Yeah, actually, Flux and I. What's up? Send. It said they were typing. Then response. New message. Well, you two should try to get out of there soon. Don't forget, it gets dark in the city faster. You don't want to be downtown when it gets dark. Icy itched her nose for a second and thought. Accidentally took a sip of her lukewarm morning coffee and then had to stop from spitting it out. Yuck. Then responded. Icy. Yeah, well, I don't know what to do. It's only a few outside, but we're locked in here. Send. After a few moments, a response. New message. I'm like 3 sectors away. It'd take me a while to get there. I can see if anyone's closer. Icy shook her head, silvery brown dreadlocks waggling around. Hesitating, then she exhaled and responded. Icy. Nah, don't worry about it. Something will work out. Plus, we're safe here. This place is like totally bad guy proof, you know? Send. There was a pause, then response. New message. Alright, well, take care. Get out safe, though. Don't muck around. Icy nodded. I won't. Send. He sent back an emote of the yellow smiley, shiftily eyed, looking around suspiciously. Then she got a message on the screen that he had closed his IM window, and after a moment of blank thought, she did as well. Crap, Icy lamented it to herself in her head. I still don't have a frackin' plan, dang it. Oh yeah. They'll leave soon. The speeches are done. Nobody's frackin' here. They'll just go away. Yeah, that makes sense. Or like the cops will come shoo them away or something. Clearly, like, duh. Icy sat back on her chair, satisfied that her idea made total and complete sense, yet something seemed off this time. Something seemed off. Yet she couldn't put her finger on it, and the time slipped by, and still nothing on the dang social medias about this. You'd think a building blockaded with people trapped inside from a mob, albeit a small one, would make some kind of news, but nope, but nope, but nope. Icy stretched her neck, dreads flopping around. Izzy, I hear you over there. What's up? Icy stopped, thought for a second, changed the subject. Oh, hey, how you doing? Feeling better? Flux. Oh, I knew it. Flux. Editor's note, well, author's note, I knew I was going to call her Flex at some point. Okay, back to the show. Flux stretched a bit. Ow, kinda, yeah. Got plans yet? Got a plan yet? Icy about shook her head, then realized Flux moved, so she was still sitting down. Icy thought for a second. A lie or the truth, or something in between, then let out a sigh before resolving. It's okay, Izzy, I get it. Flux clicked her tongue. We're safe in here, and that's all that matters. Icy let out an agreeable sigh. You are correct. We're safe in here. Nothing makes sense anyway. The trains are super sketch. Cars are locked in. You'd think someone official-like would get us in a situation like this. Would get us in a situation like this, right? Flux hummed, not sure how to answer, then blurted out with a chuckle. Flux. You know management couldn't care less about us, right? All they care about is this damn building. She slapped her expensive height-adjusting desk. And then the sudden bitter truth somehow hit differently than it normally would have, and it jarred Icy a bit. Icy. Hey, Flux. Next chance we get, let's get the heck out of here. Get your stuff ready. Whatever it is, let's get out. Not stay here. We'll figure it out. Wing it, maybe. She stretched her jaw in thought. Flux. Maybe the unexpected's the way to go. Maybe if the trains are a problem and we do a non-train thing, they'll be expecting the train. Maybe it'll work. Or maybe they'll leave and the garage will open for a few minutes. We'll take one car, double team it, get the heck out of here in your car. Flux shifted around in her chair, poking a few presses on her watch. Flux. Hey, yeah, my car's got some good charge in it now. You know, we could totally do that. But then they both saw yet another email drop at the same time. Something they didn't expect. Everyone remaining in the building, meet in the lobby immediately. There's a bus about to leave, and a second leaving in 5 minutes. And everyone in here needs to be on one of those two buses. Building is indefinitely locked down, including your vehicles. Meet in the lobby now. Repeat, mandatory building evacuation is in order. And then a note about how safety was the number one concern. Chapter 2. Flux and Icy shot up, both with an axe, threw all their belongings in their bag, and jetted to the elevator without even time to absorb what was going on. Someone else was already in the elevator from floors above, looked at both of them, wide-eyed. The guy in the elevator shivered as he spoke. Hi, what's with the short notice, huh? There must be someone on the inside. So they're letting the info out at the last second every time to try to shake whoever's out there. Probably trying to get us, huh? Then he stood and waited, looking wild-eyed and jittery. Flux and Icy looked at each other and nodded slowly as the elevator went down, 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 down to the lobby. Knew better than to try to debate anyone in the elevator. The thought didn't have time to sink in what he'd meant by insider, but there was no time to put the pieces together at the moment. Ding, ding, ding. The elevator went as it passed floor by floor, and in no time they were down in the lobby. The lobby was abuzz with activity, folks lining up to be escorted across the street into a bus, about packed, which made Flux instantly nervous, as there was no way to tell if that was the first bus out there that had been mentioned or the second. They looked like the transit buses from Motorpool that you could rent. It was okay, though. Angling her head around, she saw a second one. Flux. Icy, stay close to me, okay? We don't want to get separated. Icy nodded, also looking around, trying to count the people in the lobby, and a few more dinging from above and below the lobby from all directions. Suddenly, Flux had a thought, and saw that her watch had a little bit of a local signal to her car, and hit the eject power cable button. Some weird quirk about this model that power couldn't be ejected through Wi-Fi. Had to be Bluetooth with device location turned on. Didn't want it to sit there and rack up some crazy trickle charge bill after all, in case it was a few days until she could come get it. Who knows? And as the line to exit the building inched forward, Flux stopped. Ejecting the power cord to review wasn't working. It should have. There was a disconnector in the car that spit it out. Then the cord would retract, but no go. Dang it, Flux exclaimed, getting half out the line, and started trying to imagine where below her, roughly, her car was in the basement. Kept hitting the eject button to get her car to decouple from the power cable in the basement below. Icy grabbed her backpack to pull her along. Dang it, Flux, we've got to go. Try to focus. Stop playing with your watch. Flux stumbled as she got half-dragged out the side door by Icy as Flux kept mashing the eject button. And in what felt like minutes, but was all of 5 seconds, Flux and Icy were out the door, and on the second and final bus, getting whisked away. Flux stared at her watch, holding her phone out the door as if that would boost the signal somehow. Flux, come on, come on. Icy humphed, looking around. Icy. Hey, any idea where we're going? Are they taking us to... Icy's eyes narrowed, trying to think. We have a business continuity backup site at HQ 2. Are they taking us there? One of the guys chuckled. Nah, that would make too much sense. They're taking us to the... Wait for it. The airport. Can you believe that, cheese? Icy frowned. The airport? What the freaky frack is at the airport? The guy chuckled. Ha! Exactly. That's what I told them. And you know what they said? It's for your own safety. And I said, bruh, we're safe in the building. And you know what he said? Icy thought for a second, blinked and sighed and shrugged. I give up, what? The guy gestured wildly as he spoke. He said, "This is for our safety, to go to the damn airport where there's nothing for us. You know what that sounds like?" Icy mumbled before thinking. "A clusterfuck is what that sounds like." The guy laughed. "Ha, yeah. You're awesome." And then he up nodded. "I'm in IT. What department are you in?" The bus brumbled along, passing by what seemed like normal city at first, but then worse and more distressing scenes of civil unrest with no law enforcement in sight. "I see. I'm in QA. Business tech QA." He recoiled, amused. "Oh, one of the big brain badasses, huh?" He waggled his fingers around like announcing a special declaration. Icy crossed her arms in defiance. "Something like that. Not like the engineers, though. Anyway, you'd think if we were so damn smart they'd give a frack about us, though. No offense." The guy nodded, trying to think of whether to introduce himself and say his name or not, then got decidedly shy all of a sudden. The guy thought for a second before responding. Don't worry about it. We'll be fine." He gestured as if to brush the whole thing off and forget it, then began mumbling to himself about whether or not there was an inside threat at plan. And if there was, would the two buses throw them off their plan? Icy heard the mention of insider again, reminded her of all the training now about insider threats. But there was barely no one in the building that day. The chaos made sense now, though, trying to move everyone real fast, different exits, different times, no warning, but who inside would try to do something like this? It made no sense. It made no sense. Plus, there was supposed to be plans for this. They just got done doing another mandatory emergency plan a few weeks back. How was there not a plan for this? Then her thoughts fell silent, exhausted. The riders were quiet the rest of the way as the bus passed burning vehicles, broken glass, and buildings in the later stages of looting. Icy shook her head in disbelief, snapping back to reality, unable to let it go. Nothing about this had been on any social media or the news, and it was impossible to tell if they were getting closer to the center of the civil unrest or further away. Icy looked over at Flux, who had tucked her watch under her long sleeves and was tucking her badge in her RFID-proof pocket, and closed her eyes as she gently rested her head against the window of the bus, like it was a simple bus ride from a bad day in elementary school. Elementary school, crap. Our kid was still in daycare. Icy tucked her badge away too and checked her messages. She was almost late to pick up her kid. All this stupidity, and she had completely forgot. Icy, dang it, Flux. After this, we gotta figure out how to pick up my kid right away, okay? Somehow? It's the airport, you know, she gestured with her hand. There's gotta be a car rental or something. Flux nodded, realizing that actually made sense. Then Icy resumed texting. Glad she had her badge now tucked away in her pocket. Better to hang on to it so she could remote in from home until all of this was solved. So much for the stupid remote work mandate rules that seemed to change every other week. What a waste. And where the hell was management? Were they really sold out by an insider? What the heck? And some more lefts and rights, and an express lane through sectors that only mass transit could pass through. More lefts and more rights. And ahead, the massive, sprawling airport, and then people everywhere. But the second bus... Oh, wait. The first bus wasn't to be seen, no matter which direction checked. Then the bus slowed to a stop in the middle of the parking lot. Icy hissed at Flux. Get up, let's go. They're about to kick us out. I can feel it. And within seconds, the door opened and the driver bellowed back. Everyone out. I said here, stop. Everyone funneled out, mixed with confused murmurs. And before long, everyone was out on the Duracrete looking lost and confused. Then the bus took off without a word. Flux inhaled sharply as she looked around, Icy not leaving her side. The other bus's inhabitants weren't anywhere to be seen. No sign indicating where they were supposed to rally up like a proper emergency, and honestly, nothing indicating anything of what they were supposed to do. They had been seemingly abandoned. Flux gestured to Icy. Hey, Izzy, check your phone for further instructions. But Icy shook her head. There were none. Chapter 3. A few of the guys were looking around from their bus that had got dropped off, with them nodding and subtly gesturing to a group across the way. Mumbles under their breath sounded something like, hey, that group keeps pointing at us. Think it's some folks from our company or something? His friend got out his phone and zoomed in with his camera, shook his head. The guy whispered to his friend, no way, I don't recognize them. Ah, shit, his friend mumbled under his breath, then nudged with his elbow, nodding towards the edge of the parking lot. The second guy nodded subtly in agreement, and they subtly moved away from the group like they were casually walking off to their car, all the while glancing at the group while trying to get far enough out of the way. Nobody else from the bus group saw it, though, all too busy looking down at their phones and each other debating something. Someone was trying to assume leadership, gesturing with suggestions. Author's note, just assume it was the IT guy. But everyone else was immediately discounting what they were saying. A second person tried to support the first, but was equally shouted down. Icy did see the two initial guys scoot away, though, and they stuck out a little anyway, because they were wearing attire similar to street clothes and not so much business casual. So Icy grabbed Flux by the wrist with a sudden idea. Icy, psst, Flux, I gotta, know. Come on, come with me. Flux mumbled in a weak attempt at pulling away, nodding dismissively and mumbling, looking at her phone too. Flux, yeah, sure, sounds good, then decidedly stumbled off in tow. Icy had a hunch that these two, breaking away from their group, had a plan, or at least knew something the two gals didn't, so tried to catch up to them like how a pair of girlfriends would. Not to look too inconspicuous, heading towards the edge of the parking lot, where there was some cover. She'd seen the mob across the way too, and didn't like how they were postured. It reminded her of something she'd seen several years prior, before the bioweapon attacks on the cities, the way mobs looked when they were mad at someone who wasn't wearing their mask at the store. But these two guys, they looked smarter, determined, like they had a plan. Walked like they knew where they were going, and Icy knew people that walked like that got left alone. And Icy's plan had been to find someone with a plan, so she was convincing herself. And so she dragged Flux across the way, equally determinedly. Except she didn't call out for the two guys, nothing to draw attention, and 4 bodies would be less apt to be swarmed than 2, so Icy convinced herself this could be a mutual relationship, albeit a temporary one. Had been to more than a few cybergoth raves in the past where other people would look at her weird, and she always felt better with a couple of solid dudes. So, made perfect sense. Teaming up with people ahead of the curve was always key to get back to your car before the other groups that hated cybergoths could swarm, and she'd hate to have to dust off her cybergoth fighting skills to Kay Somme, and it occurred to her that she had no idea Flux could fight, or if she even kept the allotted tiny can of pepper spray on her, so dragged Icy did until they got close enough to the two guys. Icy hissed at them when she thought within a good range. Psst, wake up, wait up. We're coming with. The two guys didn't stop, though, getting to the wall of shrubberies, then disappeared. Icy and Flux disappeared into the hedge moments after without stopping to think, looking for them, making sure they didn't lose the two guys. Icy got embarrassed for a second, almost paused though, hoping she wasn't about to walk into a couple of dudes taking a leak, but no sooner than hands wrapped around hers and Flux's mouths simultaneously. It was the two guys from the bus they were following, except now both looked suddenly deadly serious. Had Icy walked the two into a trap? Were these the two outsiders? The insiders? Icy didn't know what to do, so she froze, seeing if Flux was going to flee or freeze, but Flux froze as well, being taken by a total surprise. The one Icy now noticed wearing the most expensive clothes out of the two whispered, "If you're going to stay with us, you've got to be quiet. We're going to sit here and watch for a minute. Try to figure things out. We think we've got someone coming. There'll be room for you, but you've got to be quiet. Understand?" Icy nodded with an oomph, and Flux nodded in the affirmative as well. Kind of heavy-handed for coworkers, but who were they to judge? You didn't always get what you wanted when it was time to boogie out of Dodge, but you did typically get what you needed, and undoubtedly there were a few people at work that surely weren't corporate weaklings outside the building, so there you go. Both Icy and Flux were soon secretly relieved to at least be with a pair of guys who were making some damn decisions for once, not kicking them out or turning into social cannibals. Then, lost in thought, Flux got an elbow nudge, and so did Icy. They looked at the two guys who nodded over. The two guys that had been trying to help the group decide a plan were now waving their hands in frustration and leaving. Then, moments later, the mob saw the bus group get small enough and swooped in on their bus co-workers, and arguing and fighting quickly ensued. It made Icy and Flux flinch, but the guys didn't move. And if the guys didn't move, they didn't move. Rule number 1 of being out: don't instigate fights and don't intervene unless it's one of your own. And that flock of sheep out there wasn't theirs. No doubt the crowd that went in to socialize and do absolute jack squat all day while the hard workers picked up the slack. At least that's what Icy told herself as stronger words started flying amongst the group they were observing. Then hands locked around each's wrists as the guys pulled them down into a kneeling position. Fast whispers exchanged from the first guy. "Do you hear that?" A split second later from the second guy. "Yeah, I hear it." Then Flux and Icy heard it too, as all four began looking up and around for the origins of the new noises. They looked around, but they couldn't see much in the hedge divider breaking up the parking lots. Then the noise got louder and louder, and what sounded like normal airport jet traffic that they had been ignoring this whole time turned into something much more immediate concerning. It was a sort of metallic crying whine from hell that was the most universal sound for a turbine doing something it didn't want to. And then, while it sounded like feet away, the jetliner rammed into the ground, sliding through where the freeway was supposed to be, and blew up, disappearing out of sight. Unfortunately, the mob and coworkers alike all jerked their heads towards the hedge as the guys pulled Icy and Flux through to the other side. "Can you two girls run?" the seeming leader of the two said quickly. Both Flux and Icy nodded, and the four broke into a jog down the hedge and away from the airport as the mob headed where they saw and heard the crash. Unfortunately, directly towards Flux and Icy's hiding spot, where they were at seconds earlier. So they ran and ran, trying to make it to the hedge maze before the mob could break through and find them, and barely made it. Peering through the next hedge maze, there was another mob, with a lone van circling about. The mob was throwing things at the vehicle, and saw nearby was the burning bus from earlier, as the first of two that had left their work. But there was no time for that to sink in for Icy and Flux right now. The first guy spoke, ignoring the chaotic bus situation. "Yo, there's our ride." The other guy nodded. "Let me text him. Let's poke through the corner of this hedge and head back onto the other side. The other hedge will block us from both." The first guy with the nicer clothes responded, Right. So Icy and Flux followed, and in moments they were in a fresh, quiet part of the parking lot. They followed the hedge down instead of across, trying to create a distance from now two mobs, and soon the van could be heard making the long way around and then meeting up with the four. The guy with the nicer clothes opened up the side of the van once it opened, gesturing for everyone to go in. His friend jumped in immediately, and then he gestured the two gals to climb in the side of the van with them. This immediately set off alarm bells to Flux, who hissed at Icy, trying to speak low enough so the guys in the van couldn't hear. "Izzy, are you trying to get us kidnapped?" "We don't know who the insiders are. I know the mob seems upset, but people just want to do good, you know? We're a defensive contractor, and we're clearly unarmed. We give back to the community, too. They wouldn't attack an unarmed," Izzy hissed back, grabbing her by the wrist, tugging her the other way now. "We have to go." But as Icy was trying to get Flux away from the van, it abruptly peeled off, leaving Icy and Flux there. As the mob could be heard getting closer, the mob got louder in seconds. Realizing the van they'd been fending off had circled around and could still be nearby. But there was no time to lament or even scream at the frustration of the sudden confusing exit of the van. Run was all that Icy could think, and they ran along the hedge, trying to make it to the next hedge and hope for cover. The sun suddenly seemed low in the sky, and Icy knew it was only a matter of time before the area plunged into darkness, and that's when things would get from bad to worse. Parking lot after parking lot they ran, until both were nearly out of breath, and then off in the distance the duo saw a new vehicle, a truck this time, and both waved and jumped, careful not to yell. But the two were both exhausted and out of breath, so they stood near the hedge to try and catch their breaths, leaving themselves one last escape avenue, but not knowing what potential risk was on the other side of the hedge behind them. The truck pulled towards them, then circled in a loop in a brief second of stomach butterflies, but slammed in reverse and backed up, and yet another mob off in the distance. "Get in the back of the truck," the driver yelled, poking his head out the window and gesturing towards the back of the truck. Someone from the back of the truck popped open the canopy and lifted the tailgate down, but in the shadows of the canopy yet the two couldn't tell who they were. The plane's wreckage smoldered not but a quarter-mile away, and fire engines from every direction, including the airport itself, could be heard. Miscellaneous plane parts lighter than the plane and burning debris were still floating around. The mob looked around bewildered before fixing their eyes on the emblazoned logo of the bus driving away, which had been, for some reason, over on this side of the parking lot now, maybe waiting for its next instructions. "They just took down that plane," one of the mob screamed. Icy was still trying to think, but she knew that didn't sound good, but was wary of this truck and who may be inside. She didn't recognize the driver from what she could see and hear so far, and inched towards the hedge divider more, just in case. "Get back! Get in the back of the dang truck," the guy from the truck yelled again, as he pulled up closer in reverse, the back of his truck partially open with a few others inside. Both girls recognized the two in the bed of the truck immediately. It was the two that had been trying to lead the second bus group away from the mob. One turned the flashlight on his phone to illuminate the truck's bed. Presumably the IT guy. And illuminate the truck's bed, so it was obvious now who the two were in the dimness of the back of the truck bed. Then Icy scooted closer still, waving her phone with the backlight on, and the greeting they used to do at night to recognize each other at clubs. The encroaching mob moved closer still, pointing, and then quickened their pace. Yep. Icy grabbed Flux and clambered into the car with aid from the bigger of the two guys, grabbing her outstretched arm. A frozen water bottle flew by, nearly hitting Flux as he scrambled in next. Then Icy scurried around her and pulled the tailgate canopy as the truck began to pick up speed. Flux swung around, having a sudden bout of clarity herself, and grabbed Icy by her belt so she wouldn't fly out, and the bigger inside grabbed Flux's backpack with her attached. And with a mighty heave, Flux was pulled back, which pulled Icy back, which pulled the hitch gate and canopy lid closed. And hearing both shut, the truck peeled away. Behind them, the mob, pointing and shrieking that they had taken the jet down as a weapons test or some insane notion like that. Meanwhile, debris from the plane, either from the explosion or whatever had downed it in the first place, were fluttering down, and both were happy to get under cover and head as far away as possible. Flux and Icy stood there, glaring at each other in the darkness of the back of the truck, neither remembering who'd began with their heroism or who had ended it. Glowing jet fuel fire reflecting in the windows of the canopy as they bumped along at what was hopefully a pace that could outrun the mob, but also not seem too conspicuous. The adrenaline from the endeavor had done its job, though, and thankfully got them both safely in the truck and away from the mob. The four-wheel drive truck passed by fire trucks and port police the same before any roadblocks could be put up. Flux's eyes adjusted and began to recognize more co-workers from the halls of work before the last biohazard outbreak shut down. One of them, well, we'll say it's the IT guy. The IT guy from earlier burped after drinking from his water bottle, then gestured over to Flux ashamedly. Thirsty? Flux modestly gestured in the negative, then sighed, checked Icy over, and she was no worse for wear, besides scuff marks and some dirt. The truck bumped around, heading through the seemingly million city potholes, of which taxes seemed to not ever fix. The bane of EV car undercarriage shielding, but plinking off the four-wheel drive effortlessly. The guy across the way scrunched his nose and lips, seemingly indifferent, and it didn't take long for Icy to break the silence. So, Icy raised an eyebrow. What's the plan? I got a kid to pick up. Is there like a route we're on? Is this some kind of contingency plan? The guy raised his eyebrows, took another sip of his water bottle, and shook his head. I know about as much as you, he gestured into the cab with his thumb. Coworkers heard about it on email, came to bail us out, but a crowd a few blocks out from the building was too thick to pick us up at work. So our buddies got around that mob and followed us here. Turns out the bad guys were following us too. I don't think anyone from the first bus made it. We are lucky to be alive. Flux sighed to herself as the gravity sunk in. That bad, huh? I never. Icy sighed too. So my kid, like, I only have the one car, which is stuck at work. Just stuck at work. The talker of the two gestured back. He's going to get us around the other end of this 15-minute section, and then we can figure it out from there where it's safe. Hopefully both of you are at least north-ish sector-wise, right? Flux and Icy nodded. Okay, that's lucky. Oh, I'm Art, by the way. This is Sepulture. He doesn't talk much. You can call him Pulch if that's easier. He's who called in the backup. Too bad nobody on the second bus would listen, eh? Sepulture gestured. Oh, the two guys you ran off with. What happened to them? Icy shrugged. They took off without us after trying to get us to ride off in the van with them, but I can hardly blame them, I guess. Art nodded, then shrugged. I know everyone in the building, and I didn't know them, so it's probably for the best. You're good with us. Pulch nodded, then gestured. I wonder if they stuck onto the bus from the protest. It's supposed to be snuck. I wonder if they snuck onto the bus from the protest, tipped them off or something. No idea. Icy and Flux's faces both went white, and it was quiet in the truck for a while. Some time passed, then two bonks from the cap of the truck disrupted the quiet reflection in the flatbed of the truck as it rumbled along. Art gestured, then spoke. Oh, that's the secret code. Hold on to your butts. It's about to get rough. They all grabbed to the inside of the truck bed wherever their hands could find purchase, and the feeling of the truck shifted. First, the truck came to a stop, jerked for a second, then rumbled, what felt like up and over a curb, and then through the brush. Then, after a few tense moments of bumping and rocking back and forth, they were back onto smooth permacrete. Yeah, there we go. Close enough. Some lefts and some rights, and then the truck smoothly came to rest. The truck was put in park, but the engine left idling. Doors opened, boots hit the ground, and could be heard coming around to the back of the truck. After a few more seconds, there was a friendly knock at the canopy door. That was the driver from the sound of his voice. Open sesame. We're here. Icy scooted to the edge of the truck bed since she was the closest and wrestled with the latch for a second. You've got to push on it and then pull, and then wiggle to the left, the driver announced. Icy repeated the instructions, and the top popped out with the opening mechanism taking over to gently swing the top open. Then the driver reached out around the tailgate. The driver motioned as he unlatched the tailgate of the truck. Excuse my reach. Here we go. This is where we part ways. At least you're off the X. Neither Icy or Flux knew what that meant, but it hardly mattered to them. What was more important was that they were seemingly safe, and that there was no creepy factor feeling to this, like the prior van situation. The driver extended his hand gentlemanly, but Icy opted to scoot around and flopped down. Flux was next, and he'd taken his hand back, but she gestured back out, offering her hand, and he courteously helped her out, landing nimbly and then bowing to him in a curtsy. Blushing, then, hoping like his girlfriend wasn't in the driver's seat or something, not having looked the other way, but it was another dude. He was scanning around looking for threats. Something in the front seat with him that she couldn't see. The passenger of the truck spoke up. Dude, we gotta bounce. The driver, yeah, I know, 2 more back here, then we'll go. The passenger responded plainly. Copy. Art and Sepulture exited the bed of the truck too and then waved. Art, appreciate y'all, talk to y'all online. The driver, will do. Then Art and Pulch walked off. Apparently, one or both lived nearby or had some other place to go, who knows. But it was getting dark. The driver rustled his hands through his hair. Well, sorry, this is where we part ways. I can't risk trying to explain you two to anyone if we get pulled over after curfew. There's a church a few blocks away. Try to crash there while you try to figure something out. Maybe a gig driver there that works on the down low, since they're officially illegal in this sector. Hey, our ride though? This one's on the house though. You never saw us. You magically teleported here somehow. Cool. Flux and Icy looked at each other and then nodded back. Icy looked towards where the driver had indicated the church was, saw it. The 4 nodded. The driver got back in and the truck took off, and then Icy and Flux were all alone again. And with that, the sun decided to begin setting and the temperature began to drop. A half block or so later. Flux. Hey, Icy, I never got a single emergency office text thing. I'm sure it's annoying to ask, but any updates? Icy's heart skipped a beat as she remembered. Yeah, let's take a look-see. Oh, hey, there's the church up ahead. Good. Okay, let's see. The two approached the church, tried the door, and thankfully it was open. Some peaceful monk chanting was playing off in the other room for some reason. A box of donated canned foods to the left and bathrooms on the right. Flux. Icy. You read your texts. I got to hit the fresher. Be right back. Icy scrolled through her texts. String away. Text after text of how the building was in lockdown. The building was in lockdown. Unknown when people could pick up their cars. A text from the daycare saying she was going to be getting billed 50 Fed coin for every 20 minutes she didn't come pick up her kid. Icy texted back that she's doing everything she could, but it immediately got kicked back. That it was an auto address. As in a non-reply auto address. Non-reply auto address. And her call to their office came back that the cell tower wasn't accepting any additional traffic due to technical difficulties. To the next text. What'd this one say? From work. The text message said, "Emergency lockdown rescinded. Please schedule a time with your manager to pick up your vehicle." Icy sighed, thinking to herself, the manager was out. How's she supposed to contact her manager? Arg. She sat down despondent and heard the monk chanting faintly from the other end of the church and did something she didn't think she'd ever do again. Sighed deeply, put her phone away, cupped her hands together, and prayed. A few minutes later, Flux came out of the restroom and had a bewildered look on her face. Flux. Hey, Icy, are you okay? Take a look at this. Then lowered her voice and realized she was being disrespectful if anyone was trying to meditate in the other room, or whatever it was they were doing. Flux waved her watch around. Flux. Look. Check this out. I must have got a weak signal to my car, and it's saying the power decoupled. So that's good. All of a sudden, I don't know why I'm getting a remote signal. What's it mean? Flux bit her lip, gesturing the watch to Icy. Icy grabbed Flux's wrist, so she'd stop waving the watch around and then was able to focus her eyes and attempt to understand. Icy's eyes shot wide and her mouth dropped as the realization hit like that. Icy, can you do the thing? Can you tell it to come here? That can only mean one thing. The door's open. Her voice lowered, the garage door. Both looked at each other, shocked and surprised. And the seconds seemed to stretch out to minutes, but Flux was already mashing the return to me button on our phone. And then more seconds felt like hours, but the car pinged that it would be there in 16 minutes. Flux turned to look at Icy with her mouth wide open, and the two jumped up and down, finally drawing the attention of the caretaker to the church. Ahem. Both turned embarrassed and ashamed, but instead were met with cups of hot coffee. The gentleman gestured over in the corner where there were creamers and sugar, set the 2 cups of coffee down, then nodded, turned, and then went back to the other room. Both scurried over to the coffee area they'd missed in the emotion of the ordeal, and about halfway through their cups of coffee, Flux's vehicle pulled in the closest spot to greet them. A ding on Flux's watch notified the two of their arrival, and Flux watched out to check on the status of her car. She walked out. She didn't watch out. She walked. Much to her delight, the car was fine, and its navigation had returned to the car, to her back safely, save for a few scratches and dings that weren't there that morning. A small price to pay indeed. Icy stayed behind for a moment and swiped her phone by the coffee to transfer the church some Fed coin, and in no time the two were off to pick up Icy's kid, after which Flux dropped Icy and her kid off at their house, and then headed home herself. Everything was safe, and she got into her house just fine. Thankfully, she still had analog backup locks installed, because guess what? No power. Flux sat down, kicked up her feet, sitting there in the quiet, her watch left in the car where it could charge, scrolling through her phone. Still not a single work emergency message. How convenient. And then texted Icy. Message from Flux. Got home okay. A few seconds later. A thumbs up from Icy on the message. Got home okay. Then a message back from Icy. Icy's message. We got a text saying to stay home for a few days until everything clears. When things are okay again, can you please help me go get my car? Flux messaged her back that she would, and that they'd figure out something with management. She considered writing down the whole ordeal and submitting as a reasonable accommodation. At the very least, buy her a few weeks to figure out how bad this was going to be. If the best security could do to keep her safe was to literally shove her out of the building and drop her off in an unknown location with no plan or vehicle, she figured she had a pretty good case to make, or at least get her home station updated to be in her own 15-minute city chunk so that she couldn't ever get stranded like that again. And now it was time to cash in on that expensive subscription her car activated. Flux turned the music app on, and the song from this morning resumed. A collab of her two favorite artists, Pisces and CDK. Boom, boom, boom. Don't be stranded. Whoa. Boom, boom, boom. When you need me, I'll be there. Whoa. The end. Alright. If you made it through all that, congratulations. Thank you. If you could please leave me a comment if that story actually made sense. I know there's, I'll admit there was some hiccups in there, but I really need to know if you were able to get through that, if you were able to make that to the end, and if that story made sense. So leave a comment down below, because I am trying to improve my writing, and I need to know if my stories are still coherent or if I have somehow completely lost my mind. It is hard for me to know. I don't know. I have to rely on other people, because these stories could be completely in my head and the words might not make any sense. So leave a comment. I will respond to each one of them, even if what you say is extremely hateful and hurtful. Or if it's really nice and uplifting. And if you appreciated all this, check out my books on my Amazon, or check out my coffee page. There's extra content there, it's where I'll post this after I clean it up a little bit more. On my coffee page for the bunker supporters. All right. Well, that is it. I will respect the rest of your time, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.